welcome to the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow and give us a rating. That would be most excellent. All right, upcoming shows. On the 10th of August at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we've got Bobby Burns from Primer 55 and Soulfly. On the 17th of August at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we've got Pete Collar from the Almighty Sick of It All. And on the 24th of August at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we've got Dennis Remsing from Outspoken. So, got a lot of great shows coming up. Stay in the loop, stay dialed in. I have a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Company. Go on over to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code WINNING, like Charlie Sheen style, for 20% off your entire order. Find Bella Canvas Next Level Tri-Blend t-shirts. If you like movies, if you like hardcore, check it out. I really think you'll enjoy them. My next guest today, he has been in one of the most chaotically crazy hardcore, punk, math rock, whatever you want to call it, bands ever, with the most interesting song titles and album names, from Busy Signal at the Suicide Hotline, How They Light Cigarettes in Prison, and Rock and Roll Killing Machine. Really great titles. They're really interesting, really unique band, and I've been following them for quite some time, and they recently had a resurgence here within recent years. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Javin Leonard. Thanks so much for being here, Javin.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. You know, the world's been crazy, so I've just been trying to take care of myself on the weekends and, you know, relax, try not to think about things too much and get too caught up in here.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And that's all you can do, really. Just kind of bide your time on this floating rock, you know?
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure.
So, as a musician, I always have to ask everybody, what was your first exposure to music? Was there music that was playing in your household when you were growing up? Did you have family members that played music? Did you play in any sort of high school band? And what was your first non-metal, non-hardcore concert? And then how did that seg into hardcore punk rock?
Yeah. I definitely had a family that listened to music everywhere. Like everybody in my family was listening to music. My uncles, my mom, my dad, my brothers. And all of them kind of joined. Remember those like CD and record and tape clubs where you could like pay a penny for like 10 or 12 discs or whatever?
Columbia House.
Yeah, Columbia House, all that kind of stuff. Well, they had that stuff back in the 60s too, my uncle and my dad. And, you know, it was all records and all 7 inches and stuff like that. And I just had this massive amount of records and tapes and CDs from all my elders that I had access to ever since I could learn how to use my little play school record player. And some of those, the first ones that I began spinning, there was a lot of Motown, believe it or not. There was a lot of Beatles. There was a lot of, you know, like the Byrds, Eric Clapton, all the classics of the 60s and stuff like that. So I had that stuff pumping all the time. And then from there, you know, I started looking more at modern music. And I think some of my first discs I bought was of the Beastie Boys. I bought Run DMC. I bought Rat Out of the Cellar. What else did I get? I think I got a Madonna album too, just because I was like, what's this girl about? You know? And then from there,
Material Girl,
right? Yeah, Material. Yeah, and my brothers though, they were the ones that really kind of turned me into heavy music, not because they showed it to me, is because they had it in their collections. They had like AC/DC, Van Halen, Quiet Riot, Judas Priest, you know, Ozzy Osbourne solo stuff, and So I would just go in there and just spin records, even on their record players. I wouldn't even bring it in my room. I'd just go in and turn their stuff on and listen to it. So that really, really did, make a huge influence on me. And my brother wanted to play guitar, fooled around with it for a while, never really did anything with it, and I inherited it, and I took to it. And I just started really playing that a lot. But from there, I didn't necessarily want to play guitar. I was like, I want to play drums. So then I tried playing drums for a year. Turned out I sucked and went back to the guitar. And really just kind of stuck with that. So let's see, first concert. Believe it or not, the first concert I ever saw was Chuck Berry, right up in my little corner of the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. He came to a place called Linden State College. That's where it's named at the time. And I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I just remember seeing it and being blown away. It was just so much energy and so much fun, so loud. So I was like, yeah, man, I'm digging this. But like I said, my brother's collections lying around kind of led me into getting into heavy music. Then I had a family move in next door to me that was from New Jersey, and they were like just outside of New York City, and they were all into like punk rock and stuff like this. And at 8 or 9 years old, I was just kind of like, ooh, what is this new kind of music, So I really kind of gravitated towards that because I really liked the heavy stuff that my brothers had in their collection. But what I really liked about the punk rock and the hardcore that I was hearing from my neighbors next door was more of the positivity, less about like ghouls and gremlins and weird stuff. It was more about like societal change and making a positive difference in the world. So that's how I kind of got into that. And then also I really appreciated more of the guttural screaming that came from hardcore, especially New York hardcore back in the 80s, that I thought was just so much more brutal than the singing that was being done over heavy metal in the day. I just felt it was much more authentic, much more angry, is how I felt at that time. And I can say up to this day, I've always kind of poured my anger into the music that I make as kind of like a healing benefit to me. So the angrier, more authentic that it feels, that's what I kind of tended to gravitate towards.
So you would say probably the New York hardcore bands were some of your earliest influences?
Yeah, in terms of like forming Drowningman, for sure. Definitely like Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, Judge, Slapshot, Shelter, and then along came Fugazi. Fugazi was where it really all of a sudden was like, oh wait, we don't have to keep doing the banana, banana, banana. We can be doing all this other weird stuff too, and incorporate it and mix it together. And that's where that kind of really started turning. And another band that was really doing stuff like that at the time was Faith No More. Faith No More came onto the scene, and they were, oh man, the singing with the screaming and just all over the place. I was just really, really kind of drawn to that. And and in hindsight, looking back on that, that's why I really like doing what I do now and have done in Drowningman, was mixing together all this music and influences that's been a part of my life since my first hearing music. I just really enjoy touching on a little bit of it all, but at the same time, I'm still really unhappy with societal norms and the stuff that's going on that I prefer to be angry, but have all those other influences in there a little bit.
Sure. And I mean, anger is can be cathartic when it's put into the context of an artistic medium, and you had mentioned Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, and all those Rev bands, which Drowningman was on Revelation Records. And, you know, I always found it to be interesting that they kind of did a a different approach whenever they were signing bands like you guys and Shy Halud and Curl Up and Die and like Kiss It Goodbye. Because when you think of Revelation Records, you think of a lot of that early catalog. So, let's talk about actually, quick question. Did you have any sort of progenitor bands, like bands that came before Drowning Man, like anything in high school
Oh
or,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. I
know,
forgot to touch on that.
proto
Yeah, yeah,
bands? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. When I first started out, you know, it was obviously just kind of doing cover band stuff. But my first cover band in high school, all of a sudden, I was like, man, I want to be writing my own stuff. I want to be doing my own thing. And part of that stemmed from like I'm a big Eddie Van Halen fan too. His guitar playing is just wild. It's just from another freaking planet. And so I guess I kind of got lost a little bit. What was the question again?
Did you have any sort of proto
Right,
bands
right.
before Drowningman?
Okay, now I'm back on track. Yes. So I realized I was never going to be able to play like Eddie Van Halen. And then other people like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani were coming along. And I was like, man, I'm never going to play like these guys. And also I got tired of trying to have to try to play with them in like a cover band. So I was like, I'm going to play with my own stuff. I'm going to get good at what I want to do and what I am doing. So after my first cover band, it was pretty much all just you know, original bands and original music. And there was like a kind of a blues kind of jam band that went from there. And then I went from there. I was like, why am I fooling myself? I love punk rock. I love hardcore. So I had a little punk rock hardcore band in high school too. We were called Baka Shikoshiko, which was Japanese for crazy masturbators. And we had to change our name for the talent show.
Baka, you know, I lived in Japan for a period and I always got called Baka, which is pretty appropriate. Yeah, stupid.
Nice. Yep, yep. But yeah, but then after that, high school wrapped up. You know, there was those first three bands. I moved to Burlington, and then that's when I joined Drowningman.
And you know, something about Vermont hardcore, because like when you think of hardcore, Vermont is not one of the first states that you think of. So what was the scene like there and how did it kind of get started? Were you guys kind of one of the, I guess you could say, like founding fathers of the Vermont hardcore scene, or was there something that had kind of already existed before you guys had come along?
Yeah, there was a pretty strong scene in Burlington, Vermont, and honestly, that's I mean, I was growing up and playing in those high school bands in the northeast corner of Vermont. Then I moved to the west side of Vermont because that's where Burlington was, and that's where the scene was. There was many other bands. I'm not going to be able to remember them all, but some of them that come to mind is Black Hairy Tongue was one of them, and also Simon, the singer of Drowningman. He was in the band called the Champions, and before Drowningman, and they really blew up the scene there as well. And several other bands. There's another band called Colorblind, Slush. At that time, the Burlington music scene just exploded. Like the late 80s and 90s in Burlington, Vermont was fantastic to be a musician in Vermont, and that was the place to be. It's since kind of like died down because venues are just dropping like flies. But that was the heyday, and the scene was good and strong back then. And I didn't care if I played beyond it or not because, especially when the Champions were really big, Simon's previous band, the scene was just alive, just absolutely alive, and really, really good community. Everybody was really positive. Everybody really kind of looked out for each other, and it was great.
What do you think makes Vermont scene unique from a place like New York or New Jersey or any one of those scenes? What do you think makes it stand out?
Oh, well, back then, I think what made it stand out is that a lot of the bands in that scene at that time were really into breaking out of the mold and making their sound different, you know, and that's what really helped Drowning Man really kind of flourish in that scene as well too. Uh, so, but nowadays, like I said, the scene has gotten more broken up because there's a lot of construction going on downtown in Burlington, stuff like that. So venues are dropping here and there, but also other venues are dropping for other reasons because like all of a sudden their insurance won't cover heavy music concerts and stuff like that. So it's kind of in a rebuilding phase, but it is strong. There's a lot of really good various bands made up of all sorts of people from different walks of life, different, you know, just different areas of life. It's just, it seems like it's much more diverse now than it was then. It just seems like it's much more inclusive in terms of whether it's gender identity or, the styles of music being played. It seems like it's more supportive and inclusive that way. But yeah, it's a little bit of a rebuilding at the moment in terms of venue space.
And with the formation of Drowningman, like I had mentioned, you guys were on Revelation Records, which, you know, they threw a few curveballs back in the day. They were starting to like branch out and do other kinds of styles, I guess you could say. It wasn't, I mean, you guys are definitely kind of in that vein, but then they would do bands like Elliot, like
Right.
that album False Cathedrals is like amazing,
Mhm.
and so you guys formed. What was that like? Like, how did you guys come together, and then how did you end up getting picked up by Revelation Records?
Yeah, so like I said, I moved to Burlington, and I was actually the last member of Drowningman to be added. I was the last piece of the puzzle in the fall of 1995. And like I said, we were all about, trying to be within the hardcore punk rock scene, but doing it a little bit differently. Just kind of infusing all these different interests that we have, all these other various genres of music. And we got picked up by Hydra Head Records, and I think that was kind of the catalyst.
Hydra Head. That's right. You guys were on Hydra Head before,
Yep.
yes.
And that was right when Cave In and Converge and Piebald and Ire were all kind of putting stuff out on them. They were the kind of the hot indie label to be on, and luckily we got on there. And we kind of rode the coattails. And also, we didn't sound like them. They didn't sound like us. We all sounded pretty different. So that was kind of the catalyst. We put out Busy Signal with them. And it did pretty well. It was very well received. Even to this day, people will still come up and tell me it's one of their favorite albums.
It's a good one.
Yeah. It's got a lot of variety on it. And from there, that's when, we started reaching out to Revelation. And there's someone that we knew there. They had lived in Burlington for a while and had started working in kind of their A&R department. So we had a little bit of an in there so that they would actually take this person seriously, that we were a good enough band to be on their roster. And honestly, if that person wasn't there, I don't know if we would have gotten on the label or not. But as luck would have it, he was there and we made it. And we were very over the moon at first because he was some of our favorite bands then on that record label. So it was very much an honor to have gotten that.
Any of you guys have any sort of jazz background? Because I noticed that with Drowningman, you guys don't ride the same riff for very long. It's like a constant, you will play something and then it goes into something else. And, it almost reminds me of like, progressive musicians or jazz musicians. So does anybody in the band have a background in that genre or a real strong appreciation for that?
Yes. Both myself and Matt Roy, the other OG guitar player of Drowningman, and now current guitar player Miles of Fire with me. Him and I both really appreciate jazz music. Matt Roy especially loves gypsy jazz. And he's even got a couple of acoustic guitars that he rocks that stuff out on. And for myself, surprisingly, when I was in college, instead of joining like a jazz band or something for guitar or something like that, they already had like 4 or 5 guitar players, and there was like no bass player. So I was like, I'll play bass. So I learned how to play jazz bass. Wow. And I still love doing it to this day too as well. So there is that influence, and also Matt and I always kind of believed that just because, the riff needs to be heavy and it needs to be driving, not everybody needs to be playing the same damn thing in the whole damn time. there's 5 people in the band. Let's orchestrate it. You can make it even crazier. You can
Right.
make it even nuttier, and then you can all lock in when it's necessary. And that's something that we still have to this day, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so unique and it was so different. I mean, and then you had bands like, you know, Dillinger Escape Plan, Dead Guy, Rorschach, all those bands. Like they were like just trying to really kind of step out of that mold of just like the verse chorus bridge, verse chorus bridge, you know, things like
Yeah,
that. And I always found that to be just it's kind of refreshing, you know. You can definitely uh appreciate the kind of the creativity and the you know the innovation that goes into that sound and you know again like you said Faith No More, that's a another one that's like really it's almost crazy to think that they had a like radio hits, you know, because you go
right.
back and you listen to some of their other stuff and it's like this is this is kind of weird, this is kind of like out there, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally, totally, totally. You know, they'd even have some stuff on some of their albums. It'd be like this one-off little, like 1.5 minute little song. It sounds like Tom Waits. It's crazy. And I
Yeah,
love it. I love
yeah,
it. You know, and that's what I really enjoyed about some of the albums from the '60s. Some of those bands, they were just all over the place. You know, they'd have their
yeah,
couple radio hits, but then the rest of the songs were just all over the place in different
right,
ways. Yep. I
yeah,
love that.
totally.
And I
I
totally
mean,
agree. Like in the '90s, we were Dead Guy, Rorschach, all of these guys, Converge, Caven. We were all trying to break the mold because the mold had been like set for like 10 years. It was time to expand it.
how do you feel like you were received in the hardcore scene? I know a lot of my friends and a lot of, you know, people were really kind of into that because it was different, but en masse, like how do you feel like the hardcore and punk rock scene kind of thought of you guys?
I think initially, it was a lot of kind of like head scratching. Like, what are these guys doing? You know, where's the verse, chorus, breakdown, chorus, end? You know, um,
Yeah.
so I think it took a while for us to kind of catch on. But like I said, or like we just touched on, there was lots of other bands doing this at that time. So it was kind of like a learning process for the listener to be like, oh, this is where things are kind of going now. So I think initially it was a little bit cold, but at the same time there was a lot of interest. Like, what are you guys doing? And it took a while for it to catch on because really, I think, yeah, it took really 2 years before we kind of really hit that nationwide kind of level. Because '98 Busy Signal came out, and then we didn't get on Revelation until 2000. There was that 2 year buffer before all of a sudden it became like the norm. And at that time too, Dead Guy's Fixation on a Coworker had been up for 5 years. So it's now been accepted. Thus, we were accepted, and from that point on, you know, it was great.
That's a great album too, and it was really great to see them come back. That was like a
Yeah,
what the fuck? You're like, what? Dead Guy's back? You're like,
yeah,
this is crazy, you know? But yeah, I think that you know that you know hardcore and punk is all kind of about you know innovation and just doing something different, and I think you guys really just really did that well. And you know, with kind of your other outside influences besides hardcore and punk rock and jazz, collectively as a band, was everybody kind of on the same page as like what they wanted to sound like, or does somebody have influences that were completely in like left field, like uh, pop music or you know outlaw country or something like that?
yeah. Well, honestly, like, well, as you might know, there was quite a few ex-members of Drowningman. There was a lot of turnover, especially in the early years. But as we got on to like Hydra Head and Revelation, that kind of slowed down. But at that point, like from Hydra Head on, anybody that would come into the band or anybody that was in the band at that point, they already kind of knew what Drowning Man was doing and what Drowning Man should sound like. So there was never very much like, hey, I want to interject this like hip hop part in this part. And all of us go like,
Right.
well, no, that didn't happen. Everybody had a pretty good idea of like what a Drowning Man song should be. And all of us, Matt Roy, myself, other people, even had stuff that we wrote that were like, no, that's not a Drowning Man song. Put it aside for something else. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said too, when it comes to a structure of a song, we have no cookie cutter platform. We have no like die cast kind of mold for it. The song writes itself, and if it's a song that's like verse, chorus, verse, and then it ends, great. If it's verse, chorus, weird bridge, back to the chorus, back to the verse for some reason, then a weird bridge, and then an ending, awesome. So we let the song kind of write itself, so we just don't have a structure. We don't have a structure. And I love that about this too. Sometimes it can be very, very challenging because Matt Roy, his writing is very unique. It's very much his own. And it can take us a very, very long time to learn a Matt Roy song. Sometimes 3 to 6 months just to learn one of his songs because there's so many subtle influences in his playing that we have to learn and adapt to. Whereas my songs, yes, I go all over the place, whether it's verse, chorus, end, or if it's like verse, chorus, bridge, weird thing, other stuff, and then a big, fantastic jazz hands ending. That I tend to be a little bit more accessible in terms of like, coming in on a certain beat and beat that's expected. Matt will write a song and it'll come in either one beat earlier or 2 beats after because he does not want it to be expected. He likes to throw people curveballs. And that throws us in the band curveballs, and it takes a really long time to learn one of his songs. But we appreciate it, we love him, and it makes us better musicians for it.
What was sort of the reason for the initial dormancy? Like whenever because you guys did the "Don't Push Us When We're Hot" album, which was released on uh, Thorpe Records, which was Andrew Thorpe King, a friend of mine who's been on the show. Then you guys kind of, you dissolved at least temporarily. What was kind of the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, well, Drowningman initially first breakup was I think it was 2003, and I had gone back to school. Other various members had gone on and moved on to other things, and Simon moved back to Plattsburgh, New York, and he met up with a bass player there, and they had the idea of putting Drowningman back together. They reached out to me. They reached out to some other OG members. I was not available. I was like, I'm back in school. I don't want to do this right now. And so they ended up throwing together Simon was the only original Drowningman member in that lineup for that album. So I remember listening to it when they first released it, and I was like, wow, this is good. It's different, but it's not Drowningman. It should have been something else. That was my own personal opinion. I think if you spoke to Simon today, he would say the same thing. It should have been released as something else. But like I said, it's still good. It just wasn't what Drowningman was before, and that's it really kind of needed at least one of the original songwriters who had an idea of what a Drowningman song should sound like as a writer in that band. But anyway, they broke up during a tour on that. It seemed pretty chaotic. Simon was having some issues at that point. So they broke up, and Simon got married, had a family. Then in 2014, for some reason, we just decided it was a good idea to get back together and have a reunion. So it took about almost 10 years before Drowningman did anything again. And in 2014, we played a string of reunion shows. It went really good, and that was the original. This is the original lineup. It was Joe Villemer on drums, Dave Barnett on bass, Matt Roy on guitar, myself on guitar, and Simon on vocals. And when I say original lineup, I mean original lineup from that run of Revelation albums. Excuse me. But at any rate, we did a good, successful run of those shows, and then we were thinking like, oh, let's stay together and let's write another album. We tried to write another album, but then it just kind of disintegrated because we were all kind of spread around everywhere. And then Simon had another kid on the way, and I was like, there's no way this is going to happen. So it didn't necessarily, none of us called it quits. Just nobody started messaging back the band chat anymore. Yeah, and then the pandemic happened, and we started all chatting, and the next thing you know, we decided to get Drowningman back together again. And not only did we decide to get back together again, it seemed like about 30 million other bands decided to get back together during that again too. It was nuts. There was people getting back together everywhere. And I was like, well, why not? Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we talked about it for a good solid year before we actually did anything. So in 2021 is when we got back together and recorded a couple new songs and played a bunch of shows. And, we're all ready to conquer the world again.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, that was something that was going on at the time where, I mean, what else are you going to do when you're locked indoors and can't
Yeah.
really go anywhere? It's like, you start talking and ideas start brewing and you're
Yep.
like, hey, we can do this again. Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. But one thing I wanted to ask you, whatever happened to Hydra Head?
They just kind
Didn't
of,
they sell off the catalog?
I don't know if he sold off the catalog. I know it's still available through various means, and I think it's mostly on Bandcamp, but I think they still retain it. Although we got the rights back for Busy Signal, and then we gave those rights to Iodine, and currently the record is available on Iodine Records, which is who we were going to put out the new Drowningman record on that never came to fruition. But we're happy that it got released again, because when the catalog kind of came down, when Hydra had shut its doors, like that album wasn't available anywhere for streaming.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it disappeared for about a year or two. So we got it back up there. But also with helps, because we initially put out the first couple of new Drowningman songs that were released, I think it was 2022, with Friend Club Records, the Ghosts Clear Records helped as well. And they initially helped us kind of get Busy Signal back on streaming. And then when Iodine expressed interest in putting out a new Drowningman record, we transitioned Busy Signal over to Iodine. And yeah, that's as far as we got.
I loved that label. They had so many good releases.
Mhm.
Heel Haul, that was one that was brutal as shit. Like, and
Yep.
yeah, I was super into like just about everything they were doing at the time. So I just had to be, I remember the talks of it where they were like, yeah, we're, I, the label's dissolving, but I couldn't remember what the exact reasons for it were.
Yeah.
Craziest tour stories. What do you
Uh-oh.
got? Because I actually heard a story, and I want you to confirm or deny this because I thought it was hilarious, but I'd like to hear some of your craziest, any sort of incidents that happened when you were on the road.
Oh man, there were so many. There were so many. But touring with the likes of Darkest Hour and Dillinger Escape
Oh,
Plan.
I've heard stories about them.
Those were some of the funnest ones. Then we had a good one, Shadows Fall, as well. Okay, there's a good one with Shadows Fall. This is a good one.
Okay.
We
All right.
wrapped up playing a show, and then we were all getting ready to head out to the next show. But we decided to get a hotel and move on from there. We decided to get a hotel with Shadows Fall together next door, so we could hang out and party for the night. And then we challenged them to a drinking game or to a drinking match. See who could drink more. See who could last. And it turns out we won because of Matt Roy. Matt Roy, he took it. He took the bullet for us. And I remember when I woke up in the morning, I looked over and Matt Roy is face down on the carpet with his pants down around his ankles. He never really made it to bed.
Oh God!
But that night was just nuts. We were running around the hotel. We quickly found out that the hotel was mostly used for prostitution. So there was all sorts of ladies of the night and pimps running around. And at one point, Matt Roy and Dave Barnett, our guitar player and bass player, decided they were going to fool with one of the rooms and ran up and knocked on one of the windows and then ran away. Then the next thing they knew, they had a few pimps chasing them. And they somehow eluded that first bunch and they ran around a corner, and all of a sudden other couple guys came up to them like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, who are you with? And they're like, they looked up, and on the balcony was this like really kind of overweight guy just hanging out in his underwear, smoking a cigarette, leaning on a balcony. And they're like, "We're with him." And they believed it, and they let him go, and then they ran back to the freaking hotel room. Man, but from there too, yeah, people just started dropping like flies. And like I said, I think it was left down to one guy in Shadows Fall. He used to call himself the Knife, and Matt Roy bested him, and we won.
What determined who won? Just whoever passed out like first?
Whoever passed out last.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, somebody passes out, and then whoever's left standing.
Yeah, whoever's left standing got the cup.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Here's the story I heard.
Okay.
Again, confirm or deny. Drowningman got done playing a show and then went to a gentleman's club and told the girls that were working there, "Hey, we're in a band." And they were like, "Oh, wow, you're in a band. That's crazy. Like, why don't you play some of your music for us and we'll dance to the music?" Did this happen?
I cannot confirm that. That might have happened during the Don't Push the Swimmer hot days when I wasn't a part of the band. That might have happened then. But I didn't hear the story. I probably would have heard that story. So I cannot confirm it. I cannot confirm.
I can only imagine them trying to dance, because it's not like Buck Cherry. You know, like, Buck Cherry is specifically music that is designed for strippers. You know, so like the mental picture that I got in my head were these girls are just trying to like dance to like all this crazy like off-timey like, you know, hardcore. And I was like thinking again, visualizing like they're probably falling off the stage or like tripping in their clear heels or something, you know, like it just made me laugh. So I don't know. Yeah. Again, this was some hardcore lore from back in the day, but okay. You never heard about it. Okay.
No, I hadn't heard about that one. I mean, there's so many more. There's so much more. There was like one time I had to talk Simon out of buying a switchblade. He wanted to start using a switchblade as a prop during our tours. And I was like, dude, no sharp tools up on the stage while we're jumping around playing. You're going to stab one of us or somebody else. No, that's a liability. He's like, okay, how about if I get a rubber fist? I'll hold that up. I was like, sure. So we stopped at an adult toy store, and Simon went and got a fist, and he brought the fist up, and it's shaped like this, it's shaped like this, and it's cut off right about there. And he brings it up, slaps it on the friggin' table, and the guy's like, "Oh, that's a nice choice. That's a mold of my buddy's fist." But that's what he would end up using. Then from there on, for like a week worth of the shows, he would whip that out. And it would be like all rubbery and flopping around.
God. Oh, you guys had a sense of humor, clearly.
Oh yeah, man. That's the funnest part about Drowningman is we tried to have a good time. We liked to keep it a good time. We tried not to take it too seriously.
Who was like a practical joker in the band?
All of us. All of us. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, now I got to hear one of these stories about like how, somebody sabotaged somebody or did something like that.
Oh yeah, here's a good one. There was one time there was a different guitar player. There was a different guitar player that had joined the band after Matt Roy had dipped out after Rock and Roll Killing Machine. And his name was Frank Smecker. He was one of the last guitar players of the original one. And he had a wicked fear of bugs, like unreasonable fear of bugs. So we were headed towards a show up near the Canadian border, somewhere around Niagara Falls. And Simon had got this idea to get a bag of gummy worms. And the rest of us are like, okay, so what are we doing with this gummy worms? He's like, well, I'm going to mix in this bait worms. He found some bait worms for fishing in a friggin' cooler. And he brings them up and he's like, I'm going to mix them together and then we'll give them to Frank.
Oh, no.
So he mixed them all together. And, you know, and he kept a couple out for himself. And he's like eating them. And Frank was like, so, hey, what are you eating? And he's like, oh, some gummy worms. You want some?
Oh.
He passes the bag back to Frank. And Frank's like, oh, these are good. And then all of a sudden you hear him scream like a 12-year-old girl at the top of his falsetto lungs. And not all the gummy worms, all the real worms went everywhere. He just spazzed. And then he wouldn't talk to us for 2 or 3 days.
I mean, was this in the van?
Yeah.
So then gummy worms and real worms are just flying.
Yep. Yep. While we were driving on the
road. That's glorious. That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have talked to any of you guys for a few days. But you know, you guys have a sense of humor, and it reflects in your, you know, song titles, album names. Thematically, though, what do you feel like Drowningman kind of focuses on?
Thematically, I think it kind of goes back to a release of negative energy for us. I think that's kind of what kept us humorous, what kept us looking on the positive kind of side of things, was to be able to have this outlet that we could funnel our negativity into. And like I said, you know, we're all, anybody and everybody that kind of come through Drowningman into Miles of Fire now, we're all pretty liberal folks, so we're all kind of on the same page. But at the same time, we never really put all that much out there in terms of like a political statement or anything like that. But here and there, you might find in past Drowningman songs, you know, where Simon decided to say something. But for the most part, it is really kind of a healthy release for us to just stay, in order for us to stay positive.
Are there any albums that you resonate with? Like, what's probably your most proudest release that you've done with that band? What do you feel most connected to album-wise? Yeah.
Yeah, Drowningman. Oh, it's so hard to pick one. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I think, honestly, one of my favorite ones was the very last EP that I did in the original run, which is Drowningman Still Loves You. I felt that it was a good mix of both Rock and Roll Killing Machine and How They Light Cigarettes in Prison put together. Like, I think, and that was kind of my goal when we were writing that album. I was like, I think we kind of went a little too far with Rock and Roll Killing Machine. There wasn't enough common thread. So I was looking to kind of put those threads back together. And I felt we were able to do that with that album. And it was recorded at the Outpost with Jim Siegel. And I just thought it was our best sounding studio album up to that point as well, too. I'd always
it is a really good sounding album.
Isn't it? It is. It's fantastic, you know. And he had done a bunch of other bands. He'd done like Dropkick Murphys, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Converge, a whole bunch of other bands that I can't remember. But he had a really top-notch studio and a good ear, and he was good to work with. And I just thought it sounded fantastic. And also, I really enjoyed the songwriting on it because, like I said, I thought it was a good merge of How They Light Cigarettes in Prison and Rock and Roll Killing Machine. So I think that's my favorite.
Yeah. I really enjoy that album as well. I think it's really good. Yeah, like you said, the production is top notch. Very different too. Well, not very different, but it definitely kind of goes into uncharted territories as far as Drowningman is concerned.
Yeah. Yep. You know, and I think at that point too, it really kind of was like kind of the last kind of era of that sound that we had. I think after we recorded that album, we lost. We lost our bass player, we lost Dave Barnett, we lost Matt Roy, and we had lost our drummer, Joe Villamere, and we had recruited Frank Smecker, like I mentioned, and we recruited Dave Joyle on drums. I can't remember the name of the bass player at the moment that we recruited, but he used to play in Poison the Well, great guy. It's going to drive me nuts that I can't remember his name at the moment. But at any rate, when we got back together, that's when all of a sudden Drowningman was taking a giant turn and a giant shift. And I don't think it got off the ground because it was too big of a shift. It was almost kind of seeming like all of a sudden everybody kind of wanted to take the band more in kind of like a at the drive-in kind of indie rock, hard rock kind of route. And the
Could have
songs we
worked.
recorded were pretty good, but they definitely were way. I think it was going to alienate people a lot. I think it was too far of a divergence. And at that point, too, I kind of, Drowningman was coming to a close too because we kind of come at a head with Simon at that point, and it just kind of closed up shop. But we tried to keep the band going as a new band called Escapist, keeping that new kind of sound. And at that point, I had kind of had to dip out because I just had just too much. I was worn out. I was too tired. The Drowningman thing had worn me out. So I ended up moving back here. And they never really got much off the ground. In fact, they actually kind of got kind of pigeonholed as sounding too much like at the drive-in and other bands at that time that kind of sounded like that. So, I think that original run of Drowningman stuff, it was great. And where Drowningman has always gone off the rails is when someone all of a sudden suggests, hey, we should sound like this. Then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. And that was kind of, that tail end was kind of the proof. It's like, this doesn't sound like Drowningman anymore. Should be a different band.
That seems like that could have been a natural progression for you guys. I could definitely see very similar, influences and it would seem like a logical maturation, definitely.
Yeah. And we thought so too. But at that point too, like I said, just exhausted.
Too much.
Just exhausted. Yeah. I needed a break, so I dipped out and went back to school for a while before I kind of.
Did you study?
I studied graphic design and fine art. So concentrations in painting and photography for fine art, and then my graphic design degree is kind of spawned into what I do today, which is a marketing specialist. And I'm kind of do it all. I do photography, video, graphic design, web design, social media, press releases, and all that other stuff, which you would think would make me awesome at it in my current band. But the problem is I'm too friggin' tired when I get home to do it.
Right.
It's more of the same
work.
Well,
and when you're focused on other projects, it's sometimes hard to kind of divert your energy into what you're doing. No, I can relate in that, had to take a day job and unfortunately when you get done with the job, you're just so fatigued and it's like, oh gosh. And then, definitely want to put in the work, but just don't have the time to do anything else. And I totally get you, man. I'm on board with that. Totally.
Yeah. And what really takes a giant hit if you don't take care of that as an artist, as a musician, is all of a sudden your playing starts getting sloppier, your writing starts to get worse. You start to, you're not focusing to that kind of aspect of your playing. And then it's a snake eating its tail, and you start spiraling until you start getting disinterested. So, you have to take care of yourself. Give yourself some space.
The Edwin Lee Gibson from the FX show The Bear was on this show, and we were talking about, because I have an acting background, how so many actors just got stuck into being a server at a restaurant or a bartender or whatever it was that their day job was. Good actors, quality actors, and musicians, same thing. They're really good at what they do, but end up getting stuck in something else and don't get to live their full potential.
Yep. I agree. And also, I taught graphic design at a local college for a little while too, and some of the best students, some of the greatest designers I would see come out of that program never ended up kind of getting a job in the field because they never learned to talk to people. They were just too shy. They just couldn't put themselves out there to convince people that I'm good at what I do, too. So there's that other flip side of the coin, that there's this amazing talent in these people, but they don't have the courage to put themselves out there as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a big skill, communication, you know, networking, all that. I don't
Yeah,
personally always like to do that because some, you know, it's hard. You know, you really have to just get out of your comfort zone and go and, you know, make connections and do all that stuff. And, you know, some people really struggle with that. It's something that has to be like an ongoing process. Like you have to continue to work at it and get better at it for sure.
yeah, yeah, yep, yep. Because even my age, it's 30 years on. I still get nervous going into like certain situations that 30 years ago I was like, I'll get over this someday, right? No, I just learn how to deal with it and kind of manage it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
even for live interviews like this, like I get really anxious about it because my mind goes nuts. I'm just like, what are they going to ask? I got to start looking up all the history of all this stuff, and I have to like shut that off.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
everything is all kosher. I always try to make sure everybody is, you know, it's not like uh you're talking with like Mike Wallace or
Right,
Larry King or somebody like that. Yeah. So
yeah.
that being said, we on this show do a trivia section, and Javen is a big NASCAR fan, so we are going to
Oh,
do some NASCAR trivia. So everybody, here we go. You like that, right? What is your relationship with NASCAR? I know what the answer is, but for the sake of the audience, what kind of motivated you to? Because I had asked you what, you know, let's do a trivia game.
mhm.
What's the subject you have extensive knowledge on? And you said NASCAR, which again, that surprises me because that's not something you would expect to hear from a musician, let alone a musician in the hardcore punk rock scene. So, what's your relationship with NASCAR?
Yeah, well, growing up in the northeast corner of Vermont, honestly, it's a pretty strong like racing culture for this community. There were several like local tracks around the area. One big time sports broadcaster for NASCAR, Ken Squire, owned
I
Thunder
know who he is.
Road,
Yeah.
which is just like 45 minutes away from here. Um, so it was kind of like in the culture, in the community. But what really drew me to it was something that my dad and I did. We just did on weekends. And, as a small kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, you like to see the crashes. Ooh, we're going to see the crashes. It's going to be great. You know? And
Yeah.
then as you mature and you're like, oh, wait, my favorite driver just got into that crash. This is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
Well,
starts to
especially
change.
when there's loss of life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That too. And you start thinking like, oh, it's much more serious. But it
Yeah.
initially started like something like that. And also when I was younger, my dad didn't really talk a lot. So it was something that we did where we didn't have to talk. We just sit there and watch the TV. But as
Yeah.
my dad aged, like all of a sudden he bloomed talking wise, and then next thing you know, he was talking to everybody. It was kind of a wild transition to see my dad go from someone who hardly talked at all to talking a lot. Getting off topic, but back on topic, we would just watch NASCAR on the weekends. Even if I like moved away and came back, or I was visiting, and it was Sunday and it was during the season, it was on and we'd watch it. And then from there, like you said, I started realizing that yeah, there's like people's lives involved in this, but there's more to it in terms of like it's not just hopping in the car and seeing how fast you can go. There's a whole industry behind it that's taking all the data, taking all of the information from these races and making safer consumer cars, making better fuel mileage, making better parts, making all sorts of better stuff. Because at that level of
Sure.
competition, everything is being stressed to the absolute maximum. So, what better place to do your research to make commuter stuff safer?
Yeah. Yeah. I never looked at it like that, truthfully. Yeah, there's probably a lot of technological innovation that goes into newer vehicles that is a result of just NASCAR and racing. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting. Did you have a favorite driver or drivers plural?
Okay, yeah. Back in the day, it was Bill Elliott. Back in the '80s, Bill Elliott,
Awesome Bill from Dawsonville.
Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. That's right. Yeah. And then Dale Earnhardt Sr. as well too. Dale Earnhardt Sr. But I will say, I kind of got out of it a little bit when I got into Drowningman because we were playing on the weekends all the time. So there was like a 7-year stint where I wasn't really watching that much of it. But after I got back into it after Drowningman kind of wrapped back up, then it was like, oh, here's Dale Earnhardt Jr. Okay, so he became a favorite. And for the longest time, I rooted for him. And after a while, it started feeling like rooting for the Boston Red Sox before they actually started winning World Series again. But then all of a sudden, Earnhardt started winning again. And Earnhardt Jr. started winning a bunch of races, and that was great. But then Bill Elliott's son came along, Chase Elliott. And right now, he's kind of my current favorite at the moment. Him, and also there's a race driver that showed up from the Supercar series about 3 years ago, SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen. And he is a road course dominator. He's absolutely insane to watch. He really ran circles around the rest of the NASCAR field. In his very first race, he won it by a large commanding lead. And he's been a lot of fun to watch. I think this is only his first full season in Cup Series. And so far, he's won like 3 or 4 of the road course races, which is it's phenomenal to watch. It's great to watch him.
Yeah, I think I told you I grew up in Mooresville, which is,
Yes.
all the race teams are based here. Yeah, my dad did construction on Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. He has he knew him very well when he was around.
Yeah.
He was also friends with Bobby Allison. Came and ate dinner at our house, and
That's crazy.
like it's crazy. Yeah, it's wild. And I went to school with a bunch of the guys, and like Regan Smith, he's like an announcer for NASCAR. He was like a grade below me or something. But cool. All right, so here we go.
That's what made me really nervous about this, is because like your dad had like rubbed elbows with like NASCAR royalty. I'm like, oh, they might be doing some deep cuts that I have no idea about.
No, I made sure because he said, do you know what questions you're going to ask him? I was like, I'll consult the internets for it, and because he would probably think of some obscure questions or something, but
right.
But no, I have a passing knowledge of it. I know the drivers, and I know like a basic knowledge of it, but yeah, I'm not gonna give you any real deep cuts or anything. So
Okay.
all right, number 1, here we go. Who is known as the king of NASCAR? And I'll go ahead and read you the questions, and there's multiple choice. If you feel like you need the multiple choice, you can ask for it. But if do you know the answers?
I know this one.
To this one?
I know this one. This is Richard Petty.
That is Richard Petty, the king. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see here. Number 2. What does NASCAR stand for?
Oh, dude, I forgot.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead and give you the multiple choice.
Yeah, let's do the multiple choice on this one.
All right, so we've got A, the National Auto Sports Car Association of Racing, B, the North American Stock Car Auto Racing, C, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, or D, the National Association of Speed Car American Racing.
It's either A or B. I'm going to go with A.
It was actually C, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. Yeah.
For stock
I didn't know that one either. That's a big acronym.
Yeah. That's why I thought it would be the first 2.
I thought it was, and I thought it was North American. Like when I first saw the question, I was like, it's got to be North.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah. Let's see here. Number 3. Which race is considered the Super Bowl of NASCAR?
Oh, I got that one. That's the Daytona 500.
Of course, yeah.
Which is really wild. It's the first race of the year. They do their Super Bowl to start the season.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. It is very weird. Let's see here. Number 4. What track is known for its high banks and speeds located in Alabama?
That is Talladega.
Talladega. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See, you're good. You're good. You're really good at these. All right. Number 5. Who was the first black driver to win a NASCAR Cup Series race since Wendell Scott?
Since Wendell Scott, that's Bubba Wallace. Is it?
Yeah, Darrell Wallace Jr. Yeah.
Darrell Wallace Jr.
That's
Yeah. That's the same dude.
But that's his name, right? Bubba, isn't that his name?
Yeah, he goes by Bubba.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you got it right. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Here's an easy one. What number did Dale Earnhardt famously drive?
At the end of his career or beginning of career? It was number 3.
Did it change? 3?
He was number 2 when he first started.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe it was number 2. Then he had the 3, and then he rode the 3 all the way through to the end of his career.
I thought he was always 3.
No, I think the very first year he was number 2. I think.
Okay.
Yep. Because I remember seeing him. Because I remember seeing him in like that iconic Wrangler car, and it had a big number 2 on it. And I was like, it must have been his first year.
Oh, you might be right about that. You might be right about that. Okay. Let's see here. Number 7. Which NASCAR driver has the most Cup Series championships?
Jimmie Johnson?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
It says Jimmie Johnson tied with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt at 7. So, yeah.
Oh, so he was tied. You know what? Honestly, I thought you were going to ask this question today, and I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, pretty sure it's Jimmie Johnson, but I can't remember if he surpassed Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt or if he just tied him.
Yeah, he tied him. I don't know. I don't know why that would make him the winner, though.
Yeah, I wonder
why that would be the. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I have to look that up. There's something deep going on there in the statistics.
Yeah, there's probably some sort of technicality or something like that. Number 8. What is the name of the playoff format used to determine the NASCAR Cup Series champion?
The Chase. No.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. See, you're killing these, man. You're killing these. All right, number 9. Which road course is located in upstate New York and has been part of NASCAR since the 1950s?
Is that Circuit of Americas?
It is Watkins Glen.
Oh, it's Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
Yep.
The others were Sonoma Raceway, Lime Rock Park, Road America, and yeah, the answer Watkins Glen. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, since we were just talking about technological innovations, in 2020, what innovation did NASCAR debut at the All-Star race to increase visibility for fans? Do you want me to read the multiple choice?
I'm going to need the multiple choice for this one.
Okay. A, electric pit stops. B, underglow lighting. C, push-to-pass boost. Or D, rear view camera overlays.
What year again? It was 2020?
2020.
What was the first one again?
Electric pit stops.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that one.
It was B, underglow lighting.
Underglow lighting, really?
Yeah, but if you're not like dialed into it now, I don't know how you would know. Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah. Huh. But you're 7 for 10, man. That was great. Like, I wouldn't have been able to get probably... I've been able to get a handful of these, but yeah, no, that was some of these I didn't know the answers for. But your prize for winning or for excelling at the game is
you get nothing.
I played the fucking wrong one. Yeah, but no, like I said, everybody that comes on the show gets a t-shirt, even if you don't play the trivia. Some people have opted out of playing the trivia. So you did excellent, sir. And yeah, I'm impressed by your knowledge of NASCAR. So that's great. That's really great. So one more question about Drowningman, and then we'll start talking a little bit about Miles of Fire. Did the name Drowningman come from the U2 song Drowningman?
You would think so. And Simon, it didn't come from that. I mean, it was somewhat influenced by that, but it was actually kind of came out of, I believe, from a lyric from one of Simon's songs in The Champions. Drowning Man was in part of the lyrics, so he yanked that out of there, I believe. I'm going in the way back machine trying to remember. But I remember, thinking the same thing, asking him about it. And he's like, well, kind of, you can say that, but also, I kind of yanked it from a song that I wrote with my previous band.
Interesting. I wonder if he yanked that from you two.
Could have. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I was always curious because U2 War is one of my favorite albums ever, and I always saw the song named Drowning Man on there, and I was like, I wonder if that's where they got that from. Interesting. So yeah, you've got a new project with Miles of Fire. It's 3/5 of the members of Drowning Man, and you said that some of the songs that were going to be used for the subsequent Drowning Man release ended up becoming Miles of Fire songs. So kind of talk about the formation of Miles of Fire and what you guys have got in the works and how well that's going for you.
Yeah. So Drowning Man just didn't work out a couple of years ago. It's kind of imploded on itself. We had written an entire album, and at that point too, like you said, there was 3/5 of us that were in Drowning Man before, but actually the drummer that is William Moeller, he did play a couple Drowning Man shows with us before the split. So he's got a little bit of Drowning Man blood in him too. So I guess you can kind of say it's 4/5, but more 3.5/5. Anyway, we had spent a lot of time writing an album for Iodine Records, and we'd written 10 songs, had them all ready to go. And then, like I said, Drowning Man came up short. And we decided to keep going as Miles of Fire and find a new singer. So we took these songs and we've been recording them as Miles of Fire. We got Tyler Gerwitz, who was formerly of a band called The Urgency, and several other bands as well. He even had a stint on national TV, I think, for a little bit in either American Idol or something like that.
Whoa.
I'm not sure how far he got. I haven't really picked his brain about it too much.
He's got a great voice.
He does have a great voice, a fantastic voice. And so we found him through TJ. TJ had been working with him in another band and asked if he wanted to try it out and join, and he did. And we did like a 3-month kind of trial and error to see how it was going to go before we decided going. Because honestly, we were kind of still healing from the Drowning Man breakup too, because like we were slated to do a bunch of stuff. This new album was supposed to come out on Iodine Records, and we'd done a bunch of good shows, and we were like on a real big upswing. So there was a lot of healing, and also getting to know Tyler's workflow. And over time, there was just a lot of kind of wrangling and jostling to trying to figure out how to work together. But once we figured it out, and we really get to know the new dynamic with a new singer, it's been going great. So like I said, those 5 songs on that first EP that we self-released were part of the 10-song album that we had written. And we're getting ready now to record another 5 or 6 songs, in which about another 4 of them were from that original Drowning Man push. So there's still some of those songs that were meant to be Drowning Man that we're doing as Miles of Fire. We're kind of back to doing it the way we want to do it. We're not really trying to sound like much of anything. We do realize we've got a little bit more spectrum width with Tyler as a singer, because he spends time doing wedding singing in the summer, making bank doing that. So he has to have a wicked variety of genres under his cap. So we're aware of that. So we've been kind of pushing boundaries here and there to kind of utilize just the range of his voice.
Yeah. Wow. Wedding singer. Do any of the people that he is contracted by knows that he plays in Miles of Fire, that he's like can do crazy hardcore vocals?
I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The crazy thing is we'll just kind of be noodling around like doing like a Queen song or something like that. You'll sound exactly like Freddie Mercury. It's nuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That guy had an incredible vocal range, man. Yep. So that's impressive. I'd be curious to know, because my mother's a big fan of American Idol, like how far he actually, or what if it wasn't American Idol, some sort of vocal competition, how
Right.
far he actually progressed along in that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to ask him, pick his brain now. I should have thought of doing it
Okay.
before I came on the show,
Yeah,
but I forgot to.
I'm curious because I'd like to ask her if she's actually heard of him or would remember him or anything.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you any touring plans? You guys plan to go anywhere? And another question I meant to ask, favorite places to play.
Oh, favorite places to play. Man, I used to love playing Austin, Texas. It was kind of like this beautiful island of art and culture and music in a big old sea of, well, Texas. And and it was awesome. It was so much fun to play there. It just felt like you were in a completely different area.
Yeah.
And so I loved playing there. I always loved playing California. Like Santa Barbara was always fun. San Diego was always fun, and Los Angeles, of course. And there was a place called, I think it was called Chain Reaction, that was out in Orange County somewhere.
Anaheim, yeah.
Yeah, Anaheim, that's where it was. Yeah,
Yep.
loved playing that place. That place was cool.
Yeah.
And then Tucson, Arizona, loved it.
Okay. Did you guys ever play internationally?
No, we were slated to a whole bunch of times. We were slated to play like several times to go to Europe. And then I think there was a Japan stint and an Australian stint that all just didn't happen. It came down to scheduling and also just the need to put out another album at that time.
Right, right.
But with Miles of Fire, right now we're still kind of in that rebuilding phase. You know, starting out as a brand new band these days is a lot harder. Even if like you've come from something else, there doesn't seem to be that much interest in like former members of bands anymore.
Right.
So it really is. It's starting right off at the very bottom. We've had a little bit of interest from a couple bigger labels, and we do have
That
plans.
used to be a big deal, like a former members band.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you can be like, oh, wow, former members of X and Y band. I'm going to check this out. And usually it was pretty good, you know?
Yep. And then sometimes
you've got interest from labels.
Yeah. So we got a little bit of interest from some labels. So like I said, we self-released this past 5 songs. We've been mostly just playing around the Northeast for now. That's the area we're kind of concentrating on. And we're waiting until we can like pick up some kind of support, whether it be label support, some kind of management, something, before we start discussing larger national tours and stuff like that. So that's hopefully, this next batch of 5 or 6 songs that we record, hopefully that we can kind of prove like, hey, we're not joking around. We release that 5 batch. Here's another 5 batch. You can see the consistency in the songwriting, and that we're here and we want to do it. So, like I said, if we get some kind of support, then we'll be getting out there outside of the Northeast.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys will make it down to the Southeast, and then I could catch you guys live.
Yeah, there we go. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. What's a day in the life of you like? And we had talked about this a little bit. Maple syrup production.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of different. Like what do you what's your day like, and then how does that factor into your daily life, and what's that kind of all about, and how did you get into that?
Yeah. Well, again, that was another hobby that my dad picked up. He picked that up back in the early 2000s. And that's about when I kind of moved back to this area to go back to school and get a graphic design degree and stuff. And he had just picked it up. They bought this new property, and it had a little stand of sugar woods, probably about an acre of sugar woods, maybe 100 trees or so. And he was like, I'm going to start tapping these. And it's a weird snake bite, because once you get bitten by it, all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're upgrading everything. Instead of using buckets, you've got all the trees tapped with lines, and you're sucking it out of the tree. So that's a crazy, weird bug that once you get it. But we've got it manageable now. And it's mostly kind of a hobby. It's kind of a hobby farm kind of thing, really. And we do about 20 gallons of syrup over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks in the spring. And it's pretty crazy when you're, playing in a band, you're working your day job, and you have to go and collect this sap. You have to go boil it, because it's going to go bad. It's going to spoil. So for about 3 or 4 weeks, it can be like you're just at your wit's end by the end of it, because you've hardly had any time for yourself. you know. But it's fun. It's something for the family to do together that kind of pulls us all together. You know, nieces, nephews, cousins, my brothers, everybody kind of stops by. So it's a big social kind of thing when you're doing it as well. But yeah, it's like I said, my dad had started it back in the 2000s. He's passed on about 4 years ago now, victim of Alzheimer's, and we've carried the torch. We wanted to keep going, so we've kept it going. We've done some upgrades to the sugar house. They had an old wooden floor on the bottom that rotted out, and I was really surprised it was still holding the friggin' evaporator that holds several gallons of sap that's boiling away. We replaced that, upgraded it with cement, and yeah, we just plan on doing it and keeping it kind of low key as kind of a family fun kind of thing to do. And we do make some money from it. We do sell it as well.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah, we do sell it locally, and you know, kind of split it up between those who also help as their payment too. So we pretty much don't have to buy maple syrup, which is great.
I'm sure your dad's really proud of you, and it sounds like you had a really great relationship with him, and that just sounds like a really cool hobby. I've been deliberating on, you know, adding to my whole plethora of projects and unfinished projects of maybe starting a garden, you know.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see. And interestingly enough, I was in India, and there was a we stopped off at, you know, there was a villager, and he would tap the trees that were there. I don't think they were maple trees, obviously,
Yep.
but like some sort of tree. And like he would like he heated the syrup and gave us like a warm drink that had the syrup in it, and it was delicious. It was so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. But yeah, there's several different trees that you can do this with. This doesn't have to be maple trees. There's some people that are doing like a birch syrup as well too. That's really, really delicious.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a little lighter. It's a little lighter flavor, but still has that kind of intense sweetness.
Can you distill it or like brew it like for alcoholic purposes?
Yep. I've taken sap and boiled it down to about halfway to syrup, and then made like a 5-gallon batch of. I guess at that point it would be called mead. I guess because it's just kind of sugars, and you're throwing the yeast in. So I made a 5-gallon batch of that. It was really good. It was really dry, and surprisingly, yeah, it had no sweetness. It was really, really dry.
Yeah. That's cool. That's so cool. Wow, that's awesome. And you know, I'm an arts and media guy, and so I always have to ask people, what are some films, you know, books and albums that influenced you, and then what are some films, books, and albums that are currently influence you, past and present?
Okay. Well, let's see. Albums for sure. Like I said, that the Faith Noir album, Angel Dust, really woke me up. Back when I was like trying to break out of that mold of doing the same thing within those genres of music. I heard that album and I was like, man, we can be doing it. Look at these guys. Look at what they're doing. I mean, I heard stories too that even like the higher ups at their record label are like, what are you guys doing? This is like suicide. Why aren't you writing more stuff like what you just wrote? You know, it's like, well, that's
why aren't you writing epic again?
Right, exactly. That's like creative suicide, just to do the same thing over and over and over again. So that album really just opened my mind up to we're making the rules. We're gonna make the rules. Let's see. Film back in that day. You ever see Crossroads?
Crossroads. I don't. Who's in it?
Ralph Macchio, and he's a blues guitar player. He's a blues guitar player.
I've never seen it. No.
Yeah, or he's actually is a jazz guitar player, and then the whole thing is he meets up with an old blues musician. I can't remember the exact whole thread of the story because it's been so long since I've seen it. But then he meets up with the devil, and he tries to get his teacher's soul back from the devil, and he has to do a duel. And who does a duel against is a guy that's played by Steve Vai. And I guess like Ralph Macchio learned to actually play the guitar as best he could to like mimic doing it accurately. Wow. And there was some really fantastic guitar playing in it. And also just the storyline was really kind of cool. So that one really resonated with me way back then.
Okay.
And let's see, a book from way back then. I'd say The Alchemist was a good one for me back then.
Okay.
The Alchemist, that was a good one. I really liked kind of like that kind of spiritual nature without having a spiritual kind of thread running through it that's recognizable as any other certain kind of religion or other spirituality that's out there. And that's kind of how I've lived my own life, is just feeling what's right in here and feeling that is my spirit guide, you know.
Sure.
So there we go there. These days, I honestly, I don't read that much now, other than headlines and news and stuff like that, just to keep up on topics. And also, I do a ton of proofreading for my job, my day job as a marketing specialist. But one of the reasons why I really don't do much reading these days, because books like The Alchemist and several others that came after them, which were like Buddhist scriptures and Zen teachings and stuff like that, I felt I got everything I was looking for in my readings, and now it was time to put it into practice. So I do practice like Zen Buddhism, more Zen practice, really. I try to take a lot of any of the threads of any kind of tags out of there. So I pretty much keep it to Zen meditation these days and keep the spirituality just open. So I don't read that much anymore because, like I said, I got it and I'm sipping it all out now. But movies as of late, you ever seen The Hounds of
Baskerville? TV.
What's that?
Or TV.
Or
because
TV.
I know like TV is format. Well, no, I mean like film, cinema, TV, because a lot of TV is basically long form film. You know?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
The Hounds of Baskerville.
Is it a newer? It's an animated film. And it really threw me for a loop in terms of like, it's an animated film. I can't remember exactly when it was made. So it was somewhere around 2012 to 2014, 15, somewhere in there. But it's an animated film, and it has the weirdest kind of plot. It's about kind of a professional bicyclist who gets wrapped up in a mafia kind of scheme where they kidnap these professional bicyclists and get them to bike on stationary bikes in order to power stuff. It's really bizarre.
It was a book, right?
It was a book too. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was a book. In the very, very intro to the movie is done in a very different type of animation that is really psychedelic and just kind of crazy. And that just really stood with me. I was like, oh my God, this is nuts. I was like, is this whole friggin' film going to be like this? Because I don't think I'm going to be able to watch this. But then all of a sudden it changed. I was like, oh, and they had this nice story. So that was kind of a cool thing that really just kind of resonated with me. The artistry of the animation was beautiful as well. There was a lot of space in between dialogue, and I love that about like indie films and stuff. There's a lot of space. There's a lot of atmosphere. It's a lot about like the lighting and stuff like that, telling the story rather than just someone yapping their mouth the whole time.
Yeah, I love films that are more image driven than dialogue driven.
Yeah,
like and the dialogue has to really mean something. Like I don't like filler dialogue. I hate it. Like I think that you've got a moving picture. Well, make it. It's a picture. Like focus more on that. Like I love I don't know. I don't know. Have you ever seen Terrence Malick's films?
No. Not that I know.
He did Thin Red Line, Days of Heaven, and I mean they're beautifully shot movies. They're kind of a slog to get through. They look amazing, but I don't know. I think somebody that does that kind of style really well is, I mean, even if you look at Apocalypse Now, like that is a beautifully shot movie. You know, like just as Sergio Leone is also a good one, like with The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, beautiful. David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, just the way that they hang on shots and they just really kind of allow the picture, like that kind of captivates you and enthralls you. 2001, Space Odyssey, another one,
Yeah, totally. Right down the same vein for sure.
So The Hounds of Baskerville.
Yeah, it's a good one to check out. It's entertaining.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Like I said,
and then albums, music.
Oh, lately. Hold on a second.
Or even newer bands to check out.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I've been really checking out that new Dead guy. That new Dead guy is really good.
It is good. It is really good.
I've been checking that out. I'm like, oh, all right, man, we're back.
The video too is funny.
Yeah,
Like I love what bands. Mastodon was another one where they just don't take themselves seriously at
yeah,
all, and they just like allow
mhm,
like humor to kind of permeate what they're doing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I've been checking that out a lot. But a newer band, War on Betty. I don't know if you've heard of them.
War on Betty.
Yeah, yeah. And they're out of California, I do believe, and they just got a pretty big record deal. So they had released a couple things and then kind of took it back because they got a record deal, and the record deal's like, keep it down. And then they re-released, and they're just starting to release stuff as of this past spring. And I've really enjoyed them. They're kind of a little bit more. They're kind of like a really heavy metalcore with a good pop sensibility.
Okay.
Yep, and they do the same thing too that I enjoy about Miles of Fire and Drowningman is the singing and the screaming as well.
Okay.
So
I'll
really
have to
enjoy
check
them.
them out.
Yeah,
All right.
and then on the lower scale, for kind of some local area bands, there's a band out of Eastern Massachusetts that just got done recording some new stuff I'm looking forward to called Power Wolves. Um, they're good. Also, Intercourse out of, I believe, Central or Western Mass. They just recorded some
Heard of
new
them.
stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to checking that out. Uh, I think about covers it for stuff I've been really vibing with lately.
Excellent. Yeah. Some of these I've never even like the Crossroads film. When you explained it more, I think I'd heard of it, but I've never actually seen it. So I'm gonna have to check that out. And House of
Yeah,
Baskerville, and a lot of great recommendations. And anybody that's listening to should check any of these bands, films, books out for sure. One question I like to ask is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I would give the advice to myself if I could go back in time now. When I was sitting in my room wondering if I should become a musician or go to college and go the traditional route, I would say do the music. Do the music. Trust yourself, believe in that, and follow that, because that's not what I did. And I ended up holding myself back and struggling with student debt for decades. And so I never really felt I saw my full potential as a musician because I didn't follow that inner voice of just do it. This is the way you should go. This will work out for you. And instead,
Mm.
I held myself back. I went to college, and I still was just going for it with music. And that hurt my grades. That hurt, but I made it through. I got decent grades by the time I got to the end. But it was so much more work to get to the level that we got to, and I could have gone beyond if I didn't have that straddling friggin' student debt that never goes away.
Yeah. A lot of people seem to say that too, like just pursue your passion
Yeah,
and don't worry about all this other external stuff. I mean, you think about it, like life is about experiences. And, we could Purcell came on the show, and he said he was talking with one of his old friends that became like, some big shot at some company or something like that, but was envious of him because he got to tour the world and play music and,
yeah,
do all this crazy stuff. And, you think you'd be happy being like materially situated and, family life, good job, kids, things like that. And he just lives very like cavalier and freewheeling, and just
yeah,
he got to do everything that he's wanted to do so far, and
yeah,
the guy was kind of like wishing he had pursued another path.
yeah, yeah. The definition of being rich is very different from person to person. Some people it's monetary, other people it's quality of life. And uh, you know, sometimes you got to just go for that quality of life rather than the societal norms of having that
Right.
day job.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that confidence. That now looking back, I should have had that confidence. I should have just done it. But I'm happy where am at now. I've got a ton of skills and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I enjoy doing it. Like I love the photography and videography aspect of it, and I love to be able to continue to be able to play music. And I really enjoy Miles and Fire now. We're doing the same thing Drowningman did, but we're starting over as a new band, and we're keeping it fun, and we're writing what we want to write. And it's awesome. It's fun.
Dude, that's great. That's great advice. And I'm looking to hear more from you guys. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. It seemed like it was Drowningman Part 2, and like the vocalist really strong. It really kind of surprised me, a lot of the stuff that he was doing for that style of music. I was like, wow, this is really impressive. This is really kind of different from you know what is typically out there. It was very, very unique. You guys have kind of carved out a really cool sound, and I'm really enjoying it. So
awesome. Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Man. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And dude, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I want to thank everybody else for coming on the show. And I have a merchandising company, like I mentioned before, Hell's Heart Merch Company, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code WINNING. I'll do my Charlie Sheen impression. Winning. Use that for 20% off your entire order, so you can win with some awesome Bella Canvas and Next Level t-shirts that have movie designs. And we do a few hardcore bands, and we got a few glow-in-the-dark shirts, so I think you'll like them. They're really nice. They feel really good. This isn't one, but they're cool shirts. I think you'll really enjoy them. And please support Miles of Fire. Follow them on Instagram, and listen to them on Spotify. Give them a follow. And do you guys have a merch store or anything like that?
Not yet. We're going to be setting one up on Bandcamp here pretty soon, because right now all we got is like a t-shirt and some stickers. But with this next batch of recordings, we're hoping to get some physical copies up there, whether it be CD, tape, or some vinyl, if we can find a plant that is pressed, and some more merch up there as well. We got a couple more designs. Like I said, starting over from scratch, difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate. I've been there. But well, cool. I'll be sure to post all your links here in the comments, and please support Miles of Fire and everything that they're doing. And like I had mentioned before, like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow, give us a rating. Everybody, thank you so much for coming. Namaste, jobless, be good. Thanks so much, Javin.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hell's Heart!